All right, my name is Rich Schmidt. I'm here with AJ Trommello, Katie McConnell. It's July 20th, 2022. We're at their vineyard in Gaston. Thank you both so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
First question, as you know, to get started is why wine?
Yeah, I think I'll take this to start. And before I even get into that, I do want to say thank you. I mean, what you guys are doing is pretty incredible and important. As you guys are familiar and everyone's familiar, wine and culture and history have so much interplay with one another, and the fact that you guys are documenting what's happening in the valley, not only for this generation to look back and reflect on, but for future generations is really cool and really important. So certainly want to say thank you before we dive in.
Absolutely.
Why wine is definitely a question that I've thought a lot about, and when you start tracing it back, we only really got into wine in 2018, but if I think back to my childhood, I grew up in a rather large Italian-American family in New Jersey, so wine was certainly on the table. Jugs of Carlo Rossi were as present as food. So wine was always present. I was never directly drawn to wine, but my family has a self-proclaimed famous tomato sauce, as most Italian families do. And I do remember as a kid just being obsessed with like the ingredients. Where did the ingredients come from? Why was our sauce different than when I got at a restaurant or, our relative's house or our friends and neighbors? And that decomposition really stuck with me. And as I grew up and started to make the sauce myself, of course, added my own little tweaks. Hopefully my dad's not watching this, but I really wanted to do everything from scratch, and I wanted to understand, are the ingredients local? Can I do this locally? Like why, there's the DOP system in Italy, and that was actually kind of my first introduction into, what mirrors a lot of, modern wine laws. But it was that decomposition of this tomato sauce that I think really kind of set me on this journey. Unbeknownst at the time, I drank wine. Don't think I really had a huge appreciation for it at the time. And then as I got older, and I can get into my background in a bit, but I was in law school in Athens, Georgia. And this kind of has stuck with me as another kind of pivot point, I think, that kind of led me to where we are today. There was a new brewery called Creature Comforts in Athens that opened, and, me and my roommates were there on day one. And, we became obsessed with craft beer, largely through that medium. And again, Creature Comforts was focused not only on trying to source local ingredients and create a really high quality, beautiful product, but also giving back to the community and supporting the community. And it kind of furthered me not only into, hey, what goes into craft beer, but how people use these platforms, not only to make something beautiful and delicious that, we connected over all too often in law school, my roommates and I, but again, also how they kind of played into the community. So I feel like looking back, it was all these moments like understanding source, understanding community, that when we finally came out here in 2018 and we could tell that story, Katie, I'll obviously let you have a bite at this question too. But I feel like all of that stuff kind of led me into wine eventually, in the sense that it's an ingredient, right, in wine. It is largely the only ingredient in wine, and is very reflective of locality and place and community. And again, trying to understand why one wine tastes different than another, regardless of if they're the same variety, a different variety, a blend of varieties, became really fascinating. And I think largely led us to where we are today, not just, wanting to make wine and starting that journey, which we are, but kind of really starting at the source, trying to trace it back as far as possible and get our hands and try and learn and understand really, at the beginning of where, we hope that our wine brand eventually goes. So that kind of leads us up to 2018, and I'll let you go before we talk about our kind of experience coming out to Oregon for the first time. And our introduction to wine. Yeah,
so conversely, I didn't grow up in a family that really drank much growing up. I grew up in Charlotte, North Carolina, had no idea that owning a vineyard or, becoming a winemaker or being in the industry was something that is even possible, that was so far removed from, where I was living and my lifestyle at the time. So it really wasn't a huge part of my childhood growing up. I, of course, started drinking wine once, that was a possibility. And I think anyone...
21,
of course. And I think anyone who knew me in college would know that I was a casual drinker of wine. But, I think it was always, kind of something that was there, but I didn't have any intentionality behind it. And so I had a feeling you were going to ask this question. So since I don't have that rich history with it, growing up, I kind of thought of it more of, why do we keep coming back to wine, and why did we change our lives to, pursue wine and to live this lifestyle? And it's, really more of a speaking point about wine and how it can connect all of us. So, I was thinking about what does it mean to me, and at its core, like AJ mentioned, it's a simple agricultural product. It's just like the tomatoes that you get from the farmer's market or, any other piece of produce. But why does it instill so much in people who drink it and inspire so much creativity? And it's viewed as a piece of art rather than, a piece of produce. And, thinking about that, and why we really fell in love with it, it's because it transcends so many things. It's a starting point for, learning about sustainability and, environmentalism and learning history of a place and who is making it. And it really has a way to capture so many different people and to pull them in and to provide a connection point. And really, it's a connection point for opening a glass of, a bottle of wine and sharing it with your friends. And I think, those are all of the things that made this the right decision for us. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's really beautiful. And, I do think wine is transcendent in this way and different than other beverages may be or other agricultural products may be. And as much as we love to support the local farmers markets and enjoy local produce and local meats, and wine is different. Wine has this ability to have a platform maybe, and I'm sure the conversation will venture into that at some point, but what maybe that platform can do, and to maybe better the industry, and our kind of views on where we think we would like to use this hopefully eventual platform to do that. But I know we kind of alluded it, so, and why wine? I guess our answers were a little bit more theoretical, but there's also kind of the other side to the story, like why wine in Oregon? Born and raised in New Jersey, I lived in the South. I went to school, undergraduate in Florida. I went to law school at the University of Georgia. And then we met in Atlanta, Georgia, and then lived together in Charlotte, North Carolina, where Katie is from. And so I'd never really had any exposure to the West Coast. I'd never actually been to the West Coast. I had a layover in LA once, in my one and only time in Las Vegas, but that was my only West Coast experience, really. And we moved to Charlotte, and we actually got invited by a couple of friends to go out to Napa. And we had probably never, purchased a wine outside of the grocery store, and probably never paid more than $10. And we probably, said all the, things that everybody hears about, is like, oh, it's really all the same, et cetera, et cetera. And again, up until that point, which was probably about 2017, that is kind of what I thought, despite, being connected to wine since I was a kid. But it wasn't this beverage to be revered. It was just always on the table. It was to be enjoyed. Even as a kid, sorry, Mom and Dad, they did let us try it at a younger age than was legally permissible. Sometimes cut with a little bit water, sometimes just a taste. But again, wine was present. But it really wasn't until 2018 when we came out here that wine kind of took on this larger life and really diverted our own lives in such a major way. But so we got invited to Napa. We thought that would be great, right? Nice little wine country vacation. And that trip ended up falling through. And so Katie and I were sitting there and we're like, well, we have the time off work. let's do something. Let's go somewhere. It was already going to be wine country. Let's do that. And Katie, loves Cabernet and would have fit perfect with Napa. I always kind of enjoyed lighter styles of red, and I was like, okay, like where in America could we go? I knew enough to know that Napa was more fuller-bodied Cabernets, Merlots, Bordeaux blends, and I was like, where can we go in America that we haven't been, and that is going to have something a little lighter? And so that's kind of how we landed on Oregon.
Yeah.
Almost by chance. It was no deeper than that.
No deeper than a direct flight from Charlotte to Portland.
Also very true. Yes, there was a direct flight, which there is not a ton of direct flights even now between Portland and some of the places that we live on the East Coast.
Then.
But so we kind of came out here, and once we kind of decided, we put together this itinerary, and we started, okay, what are the top wineries in America? What are the top wineries in Oregon? And started cross-referencing all these lists. And we've always been very, very big into food, so that was obviously very attractive with Portland. So again, scoured probably 10 different lists, cross-reference. Okay, this one's on 5 of them. I actually think I do still have a spreadsheet that did that. And so we put together this whole itinerary. We chose the wineries. We ended up staying half the time down in McMinnville for the first half at a bed and breakfast there, and then the second half in Dundee at a bed and breakfast in Dundee. And this is kind of where things radically got shifted, and is that there was a laundry list of wineries that we went to, the Iries, the classics, right, who are still some of my favorite wines today, and this was like our introduction. So we really started at a really good place. Again, thanks to Google, so somewhat intentionally, but without this really strong knowledge of wine. And the wine that we actually have in our glass, at least for me personally, is kind of the wine that essentially altered the course of my life, which seems like really like monumental to say, right? Like that something altered the course of our life, but it did. And we visited Antica Terra, and just had a phenomenal hospitality experience. And it was the Antikythera wine that really stuck out to me. And I was like, wow, this is different. This is different than the grocery store wines that we've been drinking. And so in kicked that curiosity that I mentioned earlier about like decomposing things. Like why is this so different? Why are the prices different? What goes into it? And that kind of opened the rabbit hole a little bit. And I'll let you talk about anything I missed in the trip, but that's kind of like the pivotal moment for me that sticks out. And we've talked about this a lot too. It wasn't only the wine, but
it's the experience.
Yeah.
It was the way that people welcomed us when we came. The first place that we stopped in the valley was Carlton Winemaker's Studio, and we did a tasting there. And we were just struck by the fact that we said, oh, this is what we're doing the rest of the day. And they said, oh, we can make a call for you. You should go this place. You should go that place. Yeah. And as outsiders, we viewed that as, you're recommending us to your competition. That's such a strange, different mentality. And we were really just struck by the community and, the way that people, they were so excited about their product, but they really wanted you to see what someone else was doing and their take on it. And they really, everyone here really feels like rising tides lift all ships. And we just fell in love with that mentality. And the community aspect is funny because, again, we knew nothing. Like, we were the people in the tasting room that were a blank slate, probably asking low-hanging fruit questions, probably some questions that people may have laughed about in private, but we truly didn't know anything. But at no point during that entire trip did we ever feel dumb. Did anyone ever make us feel small or like we didn't know what we were talking about? There was just like this excited generosity of sharing about their own wines, about the valley. I remember one of the wines at Carlton Winemaker Studio had the tartrate crystals on the bottom of the cork.
And we thought it was the coolest thing ever. Like they looked like little shards of like beautiful glass, and we kept it. I think we were like, oh, can we keep the cork? And they're like, yeah, absolutely, you can keep the cork.
Yeah, you can have that.
But it was just like these like hospitality impressions, you know, made I think as much of an impact on us as the wine, and that's what we had more familiarity with, right? Like we'd always loved restaurants and community and eating local, and so we were able to connect, I think, a lot more quickly with that aspect than we were with wine. Like I said, the curiosity was sparked with wine, but kind of the lasting impact, I think, was the community. So much as I remember our last day, we drove back up to Portland, and the flight was at night, and we were just kind of walking around the waterfront, and Katie and I looked at each other and were like, man, like we could move here. I could see us living here.
Yeah, we were at that point in vacation. We were like, we should come. You know, we should live here.
Yeah, and it really, it was a little bit of a joke, but like kind of looking at one another, like, you know, do we want to live somewhere else eventually? And, you know, then you go back and you fall back into your routine at your normal jobs, and it did kind of start that curiosity where we started traveling to other wine regions, and we're fortunate enough to visit quite a few that have become our favorite. Never felt the same way about the community, and it's not a knock on any other wine industries. Some phenomenal experiences that we had, but there was just something about this place that really stuck with us, and it was really special, and we kept joking around like, you know, maybe we'll move to Oregon, maybe we'll move to the West Coast, much to the chagrin of my mother in particular, who is still horrified that I moved 3,000 miles away. But we kept joking about it, and it became like a little bit less of a joke each time. And again, wine was kind of rising in the background of all this, but it really started with like, man, like there's so many special people out there. It'd be a great community to, you know, eventually raise kids and raise a family. And we ended up coming back a couple times, and each time we're, you know, I think feeling it out a little bit. Yeah,
coming every different season to make sure, you know, we could deal with the rain, we could deal with the, you know, the winters, and, you know, testing the waters out.
Yeah, and then spent 2 weeks here in 2020.
Yeah, for our honeymoon. We were a COVID wedding, and, you know, obviously our original plan was to go abroad and, you know, do the traditional honeymoon. And when we ultimately decided to keep our wedding date for 2020, we still had 2 weeks off of work, and we're like, where can we go? You know, and so decided we'd come and see if we like spending 2 weeks in Oregon. So
yeah, it was kind of a trial, unbeknownst to most people, but besides us. And I don't think like we even fully acknowledged it at the time. It was like we both were thinking about it and kept joking about it, but it was like an unspoken reality at that point. Like I felt like we'd crossed a threshold where it was like, let's just do the 2 weeks, and it's, you know, not midsummer, which we'd come the first time in, I think May or June. May. It was beautiful.
Yeah.
So we're like, let's come in late October and spend 2 weeks and see what it's like. And there was rain and cold and wind.
Yep.
It was the full Oregon experience. And I think it was after our honeymoon that, you know, it started to become less of, you know, an open secret, and more we're like, you know, is this something that we want to consider? And
at one point I was like, oh, I think AJ's serious. I think we have to do this.
Yeah.
Gotta go.
I mean, I've always been a person that's embraced large changes. And, you know, thankfully my parents kind of pushed me in that direction. I, you know, was 18 and got this decision for the first time, like, where do you want to live? And I had a sister who went to school down in Florida. Florida seemed really nice with beautiful, warm weather compared to New Jersey. And, you know, when you're choosing college up north, generally, it's kind of like the late fall, early winter. So it's pretty miserable in South Jersey at that point. So I committed to Florida Atlantic and kind of embraced going out on my own. And, you know, I had very fortunate to have a really strong family structure. But I was like, you know, let's do it. Let's try something new. And then, you know, moving up to Georgia for law school, and then, you know, moving with Katie to Charlotte, and having to find a new job, but really just embracing that change, and searching for a new experience. So I think mentally it was relatively easy for me to make the decision to move out here and start this kind of new adventure. And I felt like, we were at the perfect age where, we were fortunate enough to have this decision to make, certainly. And we decided, like, it's now or never. Like, let's make it, because the longer we talk about it and the older we get, the less likely it is that you're going to uproot, your lives. Like, the roots dig deep and deep and deep, and the longer you stay someplace, the harder it is to get those out. So I think we felt like it was, the roots were shallow enough at that point to kind of pull them up and plant them somewhere else, and that's what we did. So for me, it was easy. I don't want to say it was easy for you. We lived in Charlotte, obviously, where your parents lived, so it was certainly a much different dynamic at the time.
I mean, it wasn't easy in the sense of, leaving everything that you've known, but at the same time I just knew in my bones that it was right. So,
yeah.
It was like scary, but we were like, we'll do it, so.
Yeah. Yeah, and I realize we haven't really talked a ton about wine yet.
We'll get back to wine.
Okay.
Don't worry. What was the plan before wine? What was you mentioned law school? Where were you going? What were you doing before you came here?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I also went to law school. I went to UNC for undergrad and for law school. So go Heels. And then, as AJ mentioned, we were both right out of law school when we met in Atlanta. We were both working for law firms down there. I don't know that I ever knew that I wanted to be a lawyer growing up, but I was an econ major in college, and I don't know what you do with that. And a lot of my good friends were going to law school, and I think at the time it seemed like a great way to extend college for 3 more years. So kind of fell into law school and ended up actually really, really liking it and loving it. I love doing, client services and feeling like I'm helping people day to day, which kind of relates to wine, hospitality,
Yeah.
that mentality. And so, it kind of ended up being the right decision at the right time, and had always just, assumed that I would continue along on that path. And so, when this entered our life, it was just a big change, and so.
Yeah, and we met when you were practicing law. Well, we were both practicing law at the time in Atlanta.
I mean, and I still practice law.
Yeah,
so.
you do still practice. Katie is a very successful lawyer. I'm a retired lawyer, I will say. Not retired from working, but retired from the profession of law. I was kind of different. I think I always wanted to go to law school as a kid. I loved John Grisham books.
He loves to argue.
Yeah, which was always like the trope, right? Like, oh, AJ, and again, Italian-American family, a lot of arguing at the table. A lot of like arguments that really escalate, and then as soon as they're over, and everybody gets back to their food and their wine, which I think makes Katie uncomfortable sometimes still, as like, I'll go home and we'll have heated arguments over anything. It could be from sports to politics to whatever. There's always an argument going on. And I think sometimes it'll make Katie nervous, but it's like, oh, no, it's fine. Like, sometimes people need a little bit of a cooling off period, but it's all good.
I'm slowly becoming an honorary Italian.
Yeah, we're Italian Americans. So. It's just how we grew up.
This is just how we talk.
Yeah, a lot of hands. Katie was like, should we bring the nice wine glasses up? Like, you're going to be like emoting a lot with your hands, and we went for it, but.
We'll see if it lasts.
Yeah. But so I think I always like had this idea that I wanted to be a lawyer. It ranged from like what I wanted to do was probably whatever the latest John Grisham book that I'd read was kind of like the area of law that I wanted to go into. So I mentioned I went to Florida Atlantic down in Boca Raton, Florida for a year, and then ended up transferring up to the University of Central Florida. Which I think is now the 3rd largest university in the country, and it kind of drew me there. They had a bigger sports program and infrastructure, and I grew up playing sports and loving sports, and still love sports to this day, but that attracted me. So I'd visited some friends at UCF, so ended up transferring there. I was a political science major, so
Again, what do you do with that?
Yeah, and the point was like, well, I'm going to go to law school. Like, candidly, I chose a major that I thought would be pretty easy, and undergrad was relatively easy. UCF is a party school, and I embraced that. And it wasn't until I got to law school that I think I was like, I can coast by a little bit. Was not the case. I think there's times that I struggled in law school, but met some of the most incredible people there. Was introduced to craft beer. That was kind of the first time, as I talked about earlier, and I loved it, and I practiced law for about a year. Outside of Atlanta, doing insurance defense. Did not love that in any way. And I met Katie, and the stars kind of aligned, and Katie at the time ended up applying for jobs back in Charlotte, and it was I think we knew that the long distance thing was not going to work out. Like, I don't think that was for us. And it was like, okay, do I, stay in my job, or do I, look for something in Charlotte? And again, I made that big decision, and I said, I'm going to look for a job in Charlotte, North Carolina. And by then I was a little bit disillusioned with the legal field, and I had a really, really great mentor in law school, and I reached out to her, and she said, AJ, you don't have to be a lawyer. Like, you have a degree and it's going to get you seats at tables, but like, be whatever you want. Like, do risk management. What do you like? And she was my banking law professor, and I really enjoyed studying the financial system, and it was probably my favorite class. I didn't do really, she also taught 1L contract. Did not do well in that class, but for whatever reason, really gravitated towards her, and I loved this banking law course. And so I was like, well, let me apply for jobs doing like risk management at banks. And that's what I do today. I work at Ally Bank, doing regulatory stress testing for Ally. And I really do enjoy it and love it. And I felt like I found the right career for me.
That was the right pivot.
Yeah. It took my parents a long time to be like, so you're not a lawyer? You're not practicing law? And I'm like, no, but I'm much happier. But I think it was a little bit like, well, are you a doctor, a lawyer? Like, what,
What do we tell our friends?
Yeah. We're gauging our own success on your success here, AJ. So, so that's how we made our way to Charlotte, and that's how I, entered kind of the banking industry. And I'm actually still in the same role as I took 6 years ago, when I first moved to Charlotte. And was very happy. Charlotte is a fantastic city. I mean, we really loved living there. We had a great group of friends. There's, a really emerging, beer scene. There's a really great restaurant scene, all things that we connected really closely with. There's several great wine shops now, that we discovered once we got back from that trip.
Yeah, and I think kind of to pivot back to our journey here,
I'll ramble forever. It may not be coherent always,
get us back on the path. We came back from Oregon and found, a wine shop there in Charlotte, Petit Philippe. It's amazing. They have a similar palate as us, and they really kind of taught us a lot about other wine regions, or other small small producers that you're not going to find in a big box store. And
but they had a lot of Willamette Valley wine.
They had a lot of
what drew us, and so we went there and we looked at the shelves, and it's like, okay, they have this producer that we loved when we were out there, like this producer that we heard about and we didn't get to try. So it was like really curated and kind of just like aligned to, again, at that time, our very minimal wine knowledge. But there was enough to go off of that we're like, okay, like, we're really curious about wine. Like, they were really important in kind of like guiding us on the journey. And I feel like this interview is like a lot of people for, again, like my parents to blame on, why we're out here. But Petit Philippe, definitely a culprit. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's all I was saying. And then I think it just was a great way to open our eyes and to learn more and to really continue the curiosity that we had developed out here.
Yeah.
And you took that an entire step further, but
yeah, I think I do have like a personality that lends itself to like obsessions and going down rabbit holes. And once I kind of got bit by the wine bug and started learning more about it, I ended up taking the WSET 3 exam. I think that was in 2020.
Yeah, it was
2020 it started, because the class ended up getting shifted to online. And I think that was another moment too where it was almost like, Katie was like, okay, if you pass the exam, maybe we can think about like moving to wine country.
Like, let's see.
But like, I think we were like building up like these false barriers, right? Like, because it was a relatively a huge decision to move 3,000 miles away. So I think in your mind, you kind of got to get over that a little bit. And so, I ended up doing the WSET 3 and, I passed it, thank God. So, opened up the opportunity to move out here. And I think we kind of jumped it at that point. Not that, and the WSET program was great. It was great for me because it provided structure. I want to learn everything about everything all at once. And for me at that time, it was a lot of like French wines and a lot of Willamette Valley wines and pretty much like what Petit Philippe carried at the time. And the WSET gave me structure to, learn about other things, like what other wine regions are out there. And it forced me to do that. And so in that way, it really was great. And it does teach you a little bit about production. And unfortunately, being virtual, like I didn't get to build those bonds with like classmates and like tasting groups, which was really unfortunate. But it really was big for me to be like, okay, I have the capacity to learn at some base level about this. And now I have a little bit wider lens, what piece of this is really attractive. I obviously love drinking wine, but everything kind of kept coming back to that decomposition of like, where does it start? And the production side really just kept calling back to me, particularly like it and I've told Katie this, so I know Catherine Cole has a quote that she said before that like wine is like a gateway drug to sustainability. Apologies if I butchered the quote, but it's something like that. and for me, it really was the truth. Like that kind of really got me thinking about like the environment and climate change and how all of these different impacts interplay with wine and our relationship with this beverage and land and it really was a really important thing to me, and all of this just coming back to like the production side, the growing side, and I think that's kind of what led us to wanting to get into the industry on this side and sitting in this place that we're sitting in, and we love and we got to make a little bit of wine last year, and we love that, and we're going to continue doing that through our own wine brand. But we thought like if we're going to do this in the way that we want, then it needs to start here. Like
we have to control the source. We have to be involved in every process. I mean, that's the type of people we kind of are. I'm definitely a control freak, but like it was important to us to have a connection to the source and to the land that we're working with, and to really be hands-on for the entire experience. And for us, that was the only way for us to get into the industry. Yeah. In our minds. I mean, I'm sure that, as everyone has their own path, but that was the clearest one for us.
And there's so many, like, I feel like, and in a lot of ways, I guess I'm getting a little heady here, but like how fragile like the path is to get to this place. Like so many small decisions, if they would have pivoted somewhere else, we wouldn't be sitting here today, and it makes you really appreciative of kind of the fragility of life and decision making, but it truly does, and it really does amaze me to think like, man, if we had made this decision versus that decision, and to not visit the Willamette Valley, to not go to specific wineries that triggered our interest, to not meet certain people that kind of came in to our lives, and maybe just somebody we met one time, and they may never realize the impact that they have in really drastically altering the course of our lives to where we're sitting here today is really cool. And it is truly something that I think about a lot. And I think it's good in a way because it makes me so appreciative of the community of people here. And because again, that was such a big impact on us. And again, it's people that'll never know that they had that impact, but it really stresses to you just like a way of life and a way of treating people that you hope you have that impact on somebody someday. So it's been a really inspiring journey, certainly to this point.
Just got really heavy out here for a moment.
Yeah, sorry.
That's awesome.
I think because the shade is fading away.
Yeah, we're bringing the heat.
Yeah.
So you're at that point where the decision is made. You're leaning Oregon. So tell me about this space. Tell me about finding this and about what you were looking for and kind of how the process unfolded.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you found Peter and Matt, who I'm sure you have heard referenced a million times. Yeah. We found them somehow and ended up reaching out to them to look for a property.
Yeah. I just found their. I forget the name of their website, the Oregon Vineyard property, I think it is. Something very simple. And one of the listings was private. And I sent Peter a message, and turns out the website was a little outdated. It was no longer private, so he sent me all over the information. But
we came out here and we looked at a few different places. And this was actually the last place we looked at one day, and we fell in love with it. It was April. It was beautiful. It was, it was not quite as overgrown as it is right now, but, we fell in love, but, it wasn't quite attainable for us at the time. It was kind of a reach property. And, we said, we've got to go back to Charlotte. We've got to think about it. No matter what, we're moving out to Portland to get closer to the industry. And so we started that process. And then I remember I was at work one day in the middle of the summer, and I was looking at the listing on Zillow, and I said, shoot. Cancilla's under contract. Yeah. And that's the name of our vineyard, Cancilla Vineyard. And I realized how upset I was,
you ran downstairs to tell me this. And I very distinctly remember how upset you were, and I thought we had kind of written it off. The cards, it just wasn't in the cards at that point. And I remember how upset you were about it, and I think it reaffirmed there's something about that particular place. Yeah. But it is what it is, right?
Yeah. And so we moved to Portland in August of last year. Like I said,
we were able to work remotely, which was
a huge blessing.
Another one of those steps that, you ask the question, and if you get told no, maybe it never happens.
Yeah.
But both of our jobs, maybe somewhat reluctantly, let us do it. And in large part because of the pandemic, right? I was already working remotely. You were already working remotely. And it once we got the okay, it was well, now we ask the question. Now we have to do it.
Yeah.
So many of these moments just that we almost talked ourselves out of it, and then just got to a point where it just felt overwhelmingly like the right thing and the right thing for us at the time. But sorry, back to this particular place.
Yeah, so we moved out here and kind of had thought, we'll make wine in our garage or in our basement at our rental in Portland, and we'll start trying to get our.
Don't tell the rental company that.
Yeah, sorry. We'll start getting to know people more, and continue to look for properties, and this one didn't work out, but we'll find another one. And then I think Peter and Matt reached out and they said that deal happened to have fallen through, and Ken was interested in still selling, and we had an East Coast connection with him, and so they said, are you still interested? And it was a no-brainer for us. We were going to figure out a way to make it work. If you stand, right where we are right now and look down the valley, it's I don't have words for it. Like, it's just, you feel like it's magic.
Yeah.
And I think that there's something like really beautiful and special about this place. We love that it's a cooler climate site. You know, global warming, it was something that we certainly thought about.
Yeah. It had already been organically farmed, which was really, really important to us.
Yeah.
You know, we would have done that with any property. But there was also room here. Well, there was a house. We really were adamant that if we're going to do this in the way that we want to do it and believe that for us it should be done, then we need to live there. There's a massive learning curve. We are at the very beginning of that learning curve, and we understand that. And we felt like living here would help us navigate that so much quicker, you know, get closer to the vines, understand kind of like the day-to-day rhythms of this place and what the management company is doing and why they're doing it, and really being as hands-on as possible. We felt like, you know, there had to be a house. So there was the house here. There's also room. I think ideally our goal is to farm as naturally as possible. So we needed room for something other than a vineyard. And right now there's these woods, there's all the property down below as you drive up into the vineyard for farm animals and other crops and other things, which, you know, we personally believe is going to allow us to make the highest quality wine from this particular site and the truest expression of wine from this site. But was something that needed to be on the property that we eventually bought. So this property had it all. And, you know, with some of this stuff, as you alluded to, there's feeling too, right? Like, you kind of have to have the ability to make it work, and we were fortunate enough to have the ability to make it work. But you also have to have a feeling, and I feel like there's so much in wine that it's intuition and it's following your gut, and there's a huge science component and chemistry component, and, you know, we're navigating, you know, those realms too, and it's been a blast. And you do need to have an understanding of that, but there's also so many pivot points in the growing process or the winemaking process that, you know, the best wines in the world are made with, I'll say a lot of intuition, and you have to do a lot of things right leading up to that point, but a lot of it is gut feeling. And, you know, starting out with just the vines, we had a gut feeling about this place, and we didn't think that, even at the time, like we thought that there was a lot more potential here, and it's going to take years to realize that potential. But we felt like we weren't starting at a conventionally farmed vineyard. We were starting at least somewhere, I'll call organics kind of the middle, right? You know, there was less damage done here than some other places, and we really thought like, okay, we can work with this. Yeah,
and so many things to say, but another decision, you know, like a big factor in us when we were looking for properties was we wanted it to have enough that we could sell a portion of our grapes. Yeah. You know, people were like, you want at least 15 acres? And, you know, are you sure about that? And sometimes we're like,
well, the 15 contiguous acres is important for separate reasons, but
you know, sometimes they were right that it was, you know, maybe a big undertaking, but, you know, we've continually said that the community here is so important to us, and part of what we want to do with this project is to always sell a portion of our grapes to other winemakers in the community so that we can see what they do with our grapes. And
there's 20 acres in the vineyard. Yeah. Almost all Pinot Noir. There is about an acre of Chardonnay.
Which will be our brand exclusive.
We will get to play around with that for the first time.
Yeah.
We made 2 tons from this property last year, and so I think our goal is to never take more than half. Because like you said, like one of the great things about this is community, but also like inspiration, and wine is inspirational. Bottles of wine are inspirational, and sometimes I'll find myself, you know, on a Tuesday night, like if, you know, I'm not feeling creative or if I'm feeling a little down, like, you open a bottle of wine for so many reasons, but a lot of times it's to be inspired, and it kind of gives you this goal to, this is what we're working for. Maybe not to make this wine or that specific wine, but to think about how those wines are made and the processes behind those and the reason those people are doing what they're doing. And you get inspired by that, and it kind of brings you back and reminds you why you're doing this. So to be able to have other winemakers who we love and respect getting to work with this fruit, kind of feels like a dream. And the first time we met a lot of these people, it's like you're meeting like celebrities, right? Like these people are celebrities. And you're like eyes glaze over. And now to, be able to work with some of those in, sometimes a very imposter syndrome feeling capacity, but
huge.
to get to meet them and learn from them, and some of them are going to be making fruit from, this property is really incredible. And, I never want to lose that personally. I don't think you ever want to lose that. And so having other people make expressions of this, I feel like is this site's maybe not highest use. I don't know if vines anywhere are probably the highest use of land, but it's going to allow us to get different expressions and allow, Cancilla Vineyard to reach its potential. Yeah. And we don't think that that's just us filtering our own vision through this property, but having a diversity of thought and winemaking and, being able to enjoy them all for different reasons, and hopefully getting them all on a table someday and getting to try them all side by side, not to compare them to one another, but just to see like all of the different nuances that can come from one site, and a site that, we hope to farm as thoughtfully and as naturally as possible. And, getting back to the platform that we alluded to earlier, hopefully using that as a small platform. 20 acres isn't large in the grand scheme of things, but hopefully it gives us enough to influence one person, two people, or at the very least, just, at the end of the day, feel like, we are doing what we can to contribute not only to the land, but to the community, the people that come out here and work it, and, understanding all it takes to farm and manage a vineyard, and, understanding your own responsibilities as kind of the temporary stewards of this place. Again, not only to the environment, but to all of the different people in the wine community at every level, not just the ultimate consumers, or not just, the people that are traditionally thought of as the winemakers, but, really trying to look at the model and understand how we can impact the most people via this platform that we chose. Sorry, end rant for now.
Yeah.
So tell me about the learning process so far, learning your site, learning how to manage a vineyard, how to run a vineyard, and tell us about kind of next steps with the space.
Yeah.
I can start.
Sure.
Right now, a lot of the learning is through the vineyard management company that we're working with, aside from, reading and talking to as many people, but we found one another. Jessica Cortell is managing it from Vitis Terra, and we talked to a few different vineyard managers, and I think really connected to Jessica's kind of vision. She was able to take us stumbling through what we thought the vision for this property was, and put it into an actionable plan, or say, okay, this is what we need to do to get to where you want to go. And Jessica is a very inspirational person. Her own property is incredible, and you look at the things she's doing and think about how that may translate to this site, which is different, but that kind of spirit of farming in what we believe is the right, thoughtful way, but also trying things out and continuously learning and continuously trying to find better ways to do this is really inspiring. And
what are ways that we can, Jessica wants us to get the pigs, but what are ways that we can incorporate animals as ways to reduce the number of passes by the tractor, because there's so many tractor passes in organic farming? And, what are ways that we can use cover crops or other, more natural inputs to get to the same result as, maybe a spray that you're using from, an organic perspective. I think that's really, getting our feet under ourselves with Jessica's help. I mean, as AJ said, her team has been beyond helpful, and the time and, thoughtfulness they've put into this has been amazing. But, the next steps are really kind of having those conversations about how can we slowly start experimenting or, incorporating things slowly to figure out ways that we can get to more of a truer sense of what we want this place to be. And so.
Yeah, I think it's like finding these high level ideals that you want to work towards and starting there. So our starting point is, I would love to never put a till in the ground here ever. I would love to just have cover crops that are reseeding every year, and I would love to never run the tractor for a myriad of reasons. But having a great team of people that Jessica has, they're able to say, okay, those are great, but there are some practical things we need to do to deliver high quality fruit. And we'll work towards those goals, but here's the plan. So I feel like having like these high level ideals and always being open-minded, always being willing to learn, listen to people with, more knowledge than you.
And not being dogmatic, not saying we have to be, biodynamic, we have to be, we have to do X, Y, Z because that's what this, mentality says. It's, what does this land need? To us, it's like, we don't have kids yet, but it's our baby, and so what can we do to help it survive and thrive? And whether that's X or Y or Z or a combination of all of them or none of them, like, it's going to tell us, and we're going to do what we can to support it. These vines were planted in 1999 and 2001.
1999, 2003, and 2005. So.
Yeah, and so they've been around here pretty long. And so we're just here trying to figure out a way to make them, I don't know,
last another 20-some years. And, the learning is obviously not only listening to one person, but listening and consuming as much from as many people as you can, from conventionally farmed vineyards all the way to, naturally farmed vineyards, or, some vineyards people are even farming pretty wildly. And looking at all those perspectives, trying to understand why people are doing it and how they fit into your value set, but also not being unwilling to compromise on some ideals, right? Like we never want to farm this place less than organically. It's just not something that we personally believe in. But again, having this value set, but being willing to be open-minded and learn and adapt, like understanding that we don't know, no one knows everything about farming or winemaking or this industry, and just always being committed to learning and growing and being able to change as you learn new information, not being afraid to make those changes while still kind of working to that ultimate goal, which is and this is so high level to almost be meaningless, but like to farm this place as naturally as possible. Let nature do its thing as much as possible, and us slowly taking more and more steps back, while always, again, balancing delivering high quality fruit.
Yeah. And I think another plug for why wine, but as we've been saying, you're constantly learning. There's always going to be something different. Every year has a unique challenge. You may have been doing this for 10 years, but that means you've only seen 10 vintages. And while I think that makes some people in the industry kind of scared and sad, I look at it, and I think you do too, is really exciting. You're always going to have a challenge. There's always going to be something new. And as people who are extremely curious and like to learn, what better thing to get into than wine? You could study this forever and never know everything, because every site has something different. Every region has something different. Every year is different. It's the opportunities are endless.
Yeah.
So
it's agriculture, it's chemistry, it's art, it's community. Like wine is all of these things, and I don't know if there's a lot of professions that allow you to kind of tap into all of these different parts of your brain and all of
Yeah.
at least these interests of ours.
You're not only running a business, so you're stimulated that way,
Yeah.
but you're connecting with the land and learning agriculture, and you're learning sales, and you're learning marketing, and it really, you're just scratching the surface right now.
Yeah.
We are just scratching the surface right now, but I think we love that there's constant challenges.
Yeah, it teaches you as much as we're dictating it, or
Yeah.
trying to make a wine or farm a certain way. Like it truly is something that gives so much back to you. And getting back to that idea of community, like we were like, what do we want our lives to be? Like how do we want to live? How do we want our future kids to live? Where do we want them to live? And what are kind of the ideals and value sets that we want them to grow up around? And the choice we made, good, bad, or indifferent, is this. And we have loved every minute of it. And again, we hope to just continue to grow and learn and impact hopefully as many people as possible positively as possible.
Wow.
That was a lot of
That's a
peace.
tongue twister.
Yeah.
Peter Piper.
So
Yeah.
might have to edit that one out.
Yeah.
So on that note, you announced some pretty exciting news over the weekend. So tell us about the next step in this process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Yeah, so this is obviously it's been in the works, since we acquired the property. But, as AJ mentioned earlier, we got to work with 2 tons of fruit from this site for 2021. And so, we just launched our brand, which is called Throughline Wines. And, we're excited just to get it out there and to share with people. And, finally kind of, it was scary to put something that, you've been working on for so long into, the universe, but also that's the whole reason we want to do this, is to share with people. And so, to be vulnerable and to put it out there was really exciting.
Yeah. And it's good lead into, I think, how we went from possibly illegally making wine in a rental in Portland to making wine at a extremely small but way larger scale than I think we envisioned for the first time we were doing it. And we had made friends with Ryan Sherman from Communique Wines, who I know you've interviewed through a mutual friend, and we'd met him a few times when we came out here. He helped us when we were looking at properties, and we were kind of offered the 2 tons when we bought this property, and of course we said yes. And then immediately we're like, well, what do we do now? And I called up Ryan and was talking to him, and he was like, I could easily take on 2 tons and help you guys make it. Is probably the right way to say it from a legal perspective. So we made, with Ryan, 2 tons of wine down at Methven down in Dayton this year. And so that'll be exciting. That'll at some point, probably in 2023, be our first release. But it's fun, and I think it's a natural evolution of this process. We are so excited to see what other people are going to do with this vineyard, and we're working with quite a few of them this year. But then we're also going to slowly learn and grow. And while we're even learning to make wine, start to decipher the site. We made wine from one block 11, all the way down at the bottom of the vineyard, 1 clone from 1 vintage. So how little we learned in the grand scheme of things is pretty crazy. There's 6 different clones of Pinot Noir at different aspects and elevations throughout this vineyard. So it's incredibly exciting this year to get to start to scratch that surface a little bit more, understanding that the road is extremely, extremely long. And we're never going to become experts, but to again make the best possible wine we can and learn a little bit more each year and adapt each year is incredibly exciting, and you really get to tap into, I think, like that creative side. And I think we do look at it as something that could be as simple as something that you open a bottle with friends and never really think another thing about what's in the glass, to hopefully it's creating something that's really beautiful and that people want to think about. And it's okay for all of those outcomes, but from our perspective, it's trying to do as much as we can to make the best expression of this site and eventually other sites throughout the valley that we hopefully get to work with. as we can, and it being our expression, and not taking comfort or validation in what other people necessarily think about the wine, but what we think. Did we do it the right way? Did we follow the right process? Did we at a micro level make decisions based on what we thought was right, with the goal being the best possible wine, not maximizing value or maximizing exposure or those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
Throughline Wines. So tell us about the name.
Yeah.
I'll let you definitely take that one.
AJ could go on for 20 minutes with this story.
And it may not even make sense, but I will certainly
take... It will get from A to Z, but I don't know how it'll get there. So we came up with the name, I think probably when we came out here for our honeymoon, before we even knew that we were going to start looking for properties. But, the word throughline, which I suppose is technically 2 words, but the phrase is something that we said a lot when we were talking to other winemakers, that we were talking to in the industry, the connection between, the land and the winemaker and, the consumer and what's in your bottle, the connection between, people that we respect at, from one brand, how they might have worked for someone else, and how there's truly a connection between everything and everyone in this industry. And as we've said,
it's a small valley.
Yes,
you learn really quickly.
Yeah, but I mean, the reason that we're doing this is because we want to create something to share with people.
Yeah.
And what a better way to capture that concept than to say, the through line was between these 2 things. And so it's a word that we were continually saying, and it just kind of really resonated with us.
Yeah.
And so we think it conveys our intention, it conveys everything that wine can be for people. And so you can interpret it how you want,
Yeah, it's connection.
Yeah.
It's all about connecting with the people you're drinking with, connecting this place to what eventually makes its way into the bottle, connecting the plant to the grapes. Like it means a multitude of things, and all kind of swirling around this idea of connection
and community. Yeah.
and community. And we felt it was fitting because you could interpret it kind of the way that you want, and hopefully enjoy the wine and the brand in the way that you want to connect with it. Draw your own through lines. So it just felt, Katie came up with the name, or proposed the name, and it just worked.
Yeah.
And people have pointed out that throughline and wine rhyme, which I guess is true.
And maybe
was not the intention. But
maybe it's Bader Meinhof, but now you're going to hear the phrase all the time.
Yeah.
I hear it all the time, and maybe we're on alert for it. But
anytime somebody says it, it's like, whoa. We need to get this trademarked. We can't have anybody else in the valley stealing this. Should have done that before we started telling people what the name is. But
it's trademarked.
I would never have doubted it.
Katie is still a lawyer.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the idea that it can mean so many things to so many different people is also, we want to be a brand that resonates with people our age, it resonates with people our parents' age, it resonates with the next generation. And I think you can see that the Willamette Valley is, moving on to now a new generation of winemakers who obviously respect everything that was built here. But it's exciting to see, wine become something that people our age can connect with, because I think for so long it was considered something that, our parents connected with. And we just want this to be something that can mean anything to anyone. And is fun, like wine is fun. Like we've said so many, kind of thought-provoking I don't know if they're thought-provoking, but we've attempted to say thought-provoking things here. But it's fun. It's about connection. It's about enjoying time with one another, which, seems so much more important, after the last 2 to 3 years. And, to have a chance to create something tangible that we get to bring to our friends and say, this is something that we created, and you can open it and enjoy with someone else. I mean, it's just super exciting.
Yeah, and playing you mentioned like this being the next generation now of winemakers, thinking about the Willamette Valley and the scheme of the history of wine is nothing, right? From a time perspective, we're looking at thousands of years in some places, and it's really exciting to, obviously this place exists because of, the Charles Corys, the David Letts, like those people laid the foundation for why we're even sitting here, and it's incredible and inspiring. And now we're on to the second and probably not the third yet. We're probably still in the second generation of winemakers, and there's people really doing incredibly exciting, inspiring things, and it makes it a really fun time to be in the Valley. I feel like there's enough knowledge where we're learning from the past and maybe not making some of the initial mistakes that, thankfully other people made for us, and we're going to make our own set of mistakes and have made plenty and will continue to. But that like spirit of experimentation in Oregon is really fun, and that's thinking outside of Pinot Noir and Pinot Gris, I guess originally, now kind of Chardonnay, which has become kind of the keystones, the grapes that we fell in love with, and this entire vineyard is planted to. So not certainly denigrating those grapes, but seeing people work with other varieties, and understanding that this place is so young, and what it looks like in 20 years is going to be completely different, and there's the effects of climate change, which are going to dictate changes, but also people just, saying like, let's try this or let's try that and see what happens. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but at the end of the day, hopefully it enriches the conversation, and maybe that's a regional or local conversation, maybe it becomes a national conversation. But just trying to be additive to the industry in as many ways as possible is really exciting. I truly think it's one of the best wine regions in the country because of that spirit of community and exploration that really exists really strongly in this place.
I didn't even have to ask you about the future for Oregon wine.
We're natural interviewers,
You are.
I don't think I've looked at the camera much.
No.
Literally every lawyer I've ever interviewed has been. So in the profession. Tell me about for yourselves. You've talked about just getting Throughline off the ground. You're just kind of getting ready for your first release coming up next year. What are your future goals for the space, for your brand, and kind of for yourselves here on this space?
Yeah, this is going to be like a little bit of a non-answer, but I think just truly allowing it to become what it becomes, right? Like, I think we view both this place and the brand. I think we view ourselves more as shepherds rather than dictators, right? Like allowing the brand to, the goal is to grow it every year if possible, but to not force anything, to navigate that learning curve slowly, navigate the learning curve with this place slowly, and allowing it to kind of develop naturally, and recognizing that we could certainly set goals, but they're not gonna be what it looks like in 5 years. And and that's part of the fun, and I think that's part of the thoughtfulness and intention that in every decision that we make, we want to make the best decision for that moment, while working towards this larger, somewhat nebulous something.
But as long as you're making the right small decisions, then I think the path to the larger decision will be what it is, and it hopefully works out, Yeah,
and it is going to work out.
Yeah.
It's going to work out like it works out, and we just want to try and stay in the moment and enjoy it, and continue to meet people and learn, because I feel like that's where that's like what is stimulating to us, is that never-ending quest for knowledge and learning business and art and agriculture and chemistry and all these different things is the fun of it. And yeah, we truly believe making the small decisions in the best possible way is going to result in something beautiful, regardless of what we know today, what that thing actually looks like.
Yeah. And, I'm excited to have people start coming out here, friends and family. And I mean, when
you're the first people to utilize the seating area,
I know,
so
we're
thank
very
you.
Excited. Back to what I mean, very long ago, back to what I was saying, but I love helping people, and that's true of my day full-time profession, but I love, we love having people over to our house and to host people. And, that's a big draw of, us wanting to make wine part of our lives, is to share with people and to feel like, anyone who comes into our home or to our vineyard is part of our family. And, just to be able to have people up here and to experience, what we are fortunate enough to see every day is a really exciting, thing for me on the next path of our journey.
Yeah, it's a beautiful medium to share something that's incredibly personal to us, this place, our wine, and to hopefully, create memories with people because of that. And again, they can create memories either with the wine or the vines or the place or the
view,
valley.
Or they're there with their friends and they want to drink wine, and
we just, we want to cultivate happiness. And again, and take people down whatever path they want to go down, and treat everybody from the people like us who arrived here with not a single clue about wine, to hopefully people that are experts and are coming out here for different reasons. But I think if you try and treat everybody the same and give everybody the same opportunity that we were given, it's just going to result in things that are beautiful across the board, and hopefully better than they are today, for everyone.
That's all the questions that I have for the two of you. Is there anything I didn't ask that I should have? Anything we didn't cover that you would have liked to cover out here today?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. Again, thank you, guys. We again have imposter syndrome a lot of times, so we feel incredibly small in the grand scheme of things. But I do think that what you guys are doing is really important, and we're really grateful to play a really tiny part of it. And hopefully in 10 years we can look back and revisit this and compare. Hopefully we're better interviewers by then, but also it'll be really cool to look back and see where we were as we sit here today versus where we may be in the future, and continue to enjoy the other interviews. And again, they're truly a really cool thing for me personally to learn from. Like, I feel like I get a lot out of learning from all these people who I may not have the one-on-one time to ask a million sometimes annoying questions of. So so thank you guys for this. This is really cool and continues to be inspiring to us.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that. It's really great to hear, and we are appreciative. It's interesting when you put something out into the world, you never exactly know what it will do for someone who sees it or listens to it. So I'm really glad to hear it. Thank you both so much for your time, for your hospitality, for this amazing seating space that got warmer and warmer as we sat in it.
It is warming up.
Okay. And we'll go ahead and let you off the hook.
All
awesome.
right, thanks,
Thank you.
guys.